Mr. Steve, you said that you wanted to see me after class?
That's right, young pupil. I have grave concerns for your future, son. There are bits of knowledge that one cannot simply obtain without the help of a kind, intelligent adult like myself.
Okay, Mr. Steve.
Son, have you ever heard of the phylum Echinoderm?
No, Mr. Steve. Although it sounds rather boring and unentertaining, with all due respect, Mr. Steve.
Samir, do you kiss your mother with that sewer of a mouth? Perhaps I can still educate that closed mind of yours. An echinoderm is a marine animal that lacks a vertebrate. The phylum Echinoderm is chock full of fascinating animals such as the starfish, sea urchin, and the very currency of the sea, the sand dollar.
Mr. Steve, they are the lowest forms of life ever to crawl along the sandy sea floor. They are simply the rodents of the sea. Nothing more.
Before acting like the next Charles Darwin, it would have been helpful to know that all echinoderm have a radial symmetry and that they have no backbones, like yourself.
Mr. Steve, the members of phylum Echinoderm cannot even eat.
Yet another example of your sheer ignorance. Echinoderm animals have a mouth in the center of their bodies, often on the bottom of said bodies. They expel their waste out of their mouths, as you are doing at this moment.
But Mr. Steve, you fail to realize that your argument has collapsed on itself. Echinoderm are not the currency of the sea, and they cannot even move around. They are the most useless set of animals to ever roam the earth. With all due respect, Mr. Steve.
Ha, you got me that time, Samir. It isn't like I have lived with several echinoderms and experienced their way of life. It isn't as if I am not accepted into their society and culture, and have lived with them alone for nearly 40 years. And if they cannot move around, then explain to me why they have tube-like feet for transportation. With all due respect, Samir.
Mr. Steve, you cannot just create false statistics and facts off of the top of your head. If what you say is the truth and nothing but, then how do they reproduce?
Samir, anyone who is anyone knows that most echinoderms reproduce sexually, but as there is for many rules, an exception exists to this rule. Sea stars reproduce asexually, and a starfish reproduces sexually, for example. Also, development takes place externally, as any idiot knows.
Maybe they have all of this fancy reproduction stuff, but they cannot truly feel, as humans can.
But that is where you are wrong, Samir. The starfish, for example, has a complex nerve net. However, they do not have a brain, similar to yourself. Pretty good for an animal that lives in a warm, shallow, marine environment.
You are simply wrong, Mr. Steve. I am out of this joint.
And that is how I proved to that punk that echinoderms are the greatest animal phylum of all. Samir, on the other hand, dropped out of college and later went to prison, where he belongs.
This is a production by Thomas English for Coster 7th period. I hope you enjoyed.